Have you ever had that one pastor at your church that you never wanted to see leave? You never wanted to see that man leave. You never wanted him to go anywhere. You never wanted him to ever retire. You never wanted him to ever leave the church. Many people felt this way about my dad. My dad was a pastor of a rural church in Kentucky for 32 years. I was 5 when we moved there. In 32 years, he still stayed at that church. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the day that my father passed away. I know most of you guys, in a narrative speech, something that's meaningful to you is something that's lifted up. This meant so much to me to see my father. He always said he wanted to go quick, and the day that he passed away was quick. August the 4th, let's go back 2 weeks prior to August the 4th. My dad had scheduled gallbladder surgery because he was having some issues with his gallbladder. Surgery went well, with a few minor complications. So they had done some tests, they had performed some tests, and realized that he needed a prostate scrape. Well, they went in and did a prostate surgery. Everything turned out really well with it. The only problem is he had an issue and his blood pressure had bottomed out. My dad had always had issues with his blood pressure. And they were going to let it go on August the 3rd. But my dad got sick. He just started getting sick in the middle of the night, and it was a good thing that they didn't let him go. Because if they'd let him go, my mom would have probably found him in their bed with a massive heart attack. Not a way that I would want to see my wife, or my wife to see me. So, Saturday morning, August the 4th, my mom calls my sister. My sister lives in Hendersonville, Tennessee, with me, or actually in the same subdivision we live in. My mom calls and says, "You guys might want to come up here. It looks like your dad has had a heart attack." Well, we started driving. Well, we started getting everything together. My wife, my daughter, we started grabbing everything. We started getting everything together. Go pick up my sister. We start driving. It's 2.5 hours northeast in Kentucky. We start driving up. My sister's in constant communication with my mom. She tells us, we get halfway up there, and she's like, and we call her, "Well, which way do we need to go? Do we need to go to Louisville?" They were talking about life flighting to Louisville. "Do we need to come on over to the regional hospital that he's at right now?" Well, my mom finally called us back, and she said, "You all just go on to Louisville. They're going to life flight Dad to Louisville." And so we were okay with that because we were on Interstate 65 heading straight north. The problem that we had with this was my mom was still stuck at the hospital, so we didn't know how to get there. So we didn't know how to get her there from the regional hospital to Louisville. So we called my brother. My brother lives in Kentucky. He lives near Lexington in Nicholasville, Kentucky. So we call him and say, "Hey, we need you to get Mom." So he rushes to get Mom. As soon as they get ready to load my dad into the helicopter, my brother gets there, and they fly my dad to Louisville, Jewish hospital there in Louisville. My brother takes my mom. They drive to Louisville. Somehow, some way, we all met. to Louisville at about the same time, which was kind of weird, kind of strange. We never thought anything about it, but we all arrived at the same time. We knew that my dad, as soon as he got to Jewish Hospital, they were going to take him into the cardiac cath lab to do some tests to see if he had, when we got to talking to my mom, she told us that it wasn't just one heart attack. He had another heart attack. And the heart attack that he had was the one that was most damaging. We got up there. We got to Louisville Jewish Hospital again, and we got to the cardiac waiting room. We waited. We waited for about an hour and a half. Still nothing. So we called back into the back to the cardiac cath room. We're like, we're the Stansbury family. We don't know what's going on with my dad. What's happening? They said, the doctor's going to come out and talk to you in just a few moments. So we waited again. We waited probably another 30 minutes. Doctor finally comes out. The news that he was giving us, we were not prepared to have or to hear. The doctor looks at us, and now mind you, my sister is a nurse, so they think that this is a family, they don't know anything about the medical. We're just going to tell them the ins and outs, and just everything will be fine, blah blah blah. Well, the doctor comes in. He says, it looks like the lower part of the heart for your dad and your husband is dead. We tried to do the heart cath, but we could not get the catheter past the blockage. The blockage was in what they called the widowmaker artery. So that part of the heart was damaged so bad that it could not be repaired. So they were talking ECMO, they were talking heart transplant, they were talking other things. But they told us that the next 36 hours was the most crucial time to see if my dad was going to even recover from this. We get to talking as a family. We're waiting for, okay, when are we going to be able to see Dad? When are we going to see him? When can we see him? So we finally the doctor says, we're going to wheel him back to a room for recovery, where we're going to wait to either possibly put him on ECMO or wait to see if there's a donor for a transplant. Now mind you, my dad has always said all of his life that he never wanted his chest cracked open. Being a pastor, seeing people with heart transplants, seeing people with heart surgeries, and the quality of life thereafter, just wasn't what he wanted. He didn't want that for my mom. He didn't want that for us, to have to come back and to have to take care of him. He didn't want that. So they wheeled my dad back into the room. We got to go visit with him. He had some pumps. He had some external pumps. He had some external defibrillators hooked to him. And excuse me if I get a little choked up, because this is my last memories of my dad. He's hooked up to all this medicine and all this machinery. We just and actually he was talking to us. He was alive. He was still talking. He's like, "Is everything okay? How are you all?" We got to spend 5 hours after they told us that the bottom part of his heart was dead. We got to spend the most beautiful 5 hours that I've ever spent with my dad. He told me some great things. He told my wife some great things. He told my wife, my wife got to tell him a few things that she's always wanted to tell him. So, my dad, some of the few things that he told us, I'll share this one with you. My dad told me, my mom walked out of the room. Me and my brother were standing by the bed. Said, if anything ever happens to me, you always take care of your mom. We said, we deal with that. We will. And that was about 3 or 4 hours later, about 3 hours into, or about 4 hours into, I guess. So we were all getting hungry during the time. You know, we were waiting, we were sitting there talking to Mom and Dad. Dad was worried about, you know, moving his legs because he had a catheter in one of his legs. He was worried about moving that one leg. He was worried about moving that right leg. And so we decided, we asked the nurse, and, you know, we said, you know, can he move his other leg? And they said, yeah, just keep that other one still. So we started getting hungry again, and we started, you know, talking about going getting food. And so me and my wife and my daughter was 4, who is 4, she was a trooper that day. So we all went down and we get her out of the room, just kind of get her talking. And just kind of get some food in all of us, get some food for all of us. So we go down to the cafeteria, the little cafeteria that they have there, and we started ordering food. We started, you know, getting everything. We started paying. Now, mind you, I work at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. We hear pages all over the time, overhead. We just never pay any attention to it because most of the time it's not anything to do with our families, or it's nothing to do with, you know, we have to respond to them if it's in our zone. My wife and I were checking out, paying for our food. We heard stat 4 South. Didn't think anything of it. I turned to my wife and said, that's where Dad is. But didn't think anything of it. So we got our food, started getting in the elevator, and we got into the elevator. It goes up to the 4th floor. We're getting off. It's me, my wife, my daughter, and the deacon, one of the head of the deacons of the church. We walked down the hall. Here comes my first cousin. Said, John, you need to get back there. There's your dad. They just called a stat on your dad. I walked back, and I've seen chest compressions. I've seen them work on patients. I've seen all of that working at a hospital. But you never think that it's going to happen to one of your parents. We walk in. They're doing the chest compressions. They shovel us over to another room. 15, 20 minutes pass. Feels like an eternity. They come in. They said, "That's all we can do." I guess my dad finally retired himself. The Lord retired him. He took him on that day, August the 4th, 6:30 p.m. The Lord retired my dad. He took him. I'm not bitter. The Lord did not just take him from us. The Lord took him, retired him, because my dad always said he doesn't feel like he can leave the church that he was at because they were prospering. They were prospering, and he felt like he was giving up on the church if he left. So my dad got retired by the Lord. after my dad passed, you know, his leg that he was so worried about, it just fell. I got to say my last words to him. The last words I said to him, I'll see you soon. We all die. We're all going to leave this world. And I know that I'll see my dad one day. Because the Lord has always said that we will all see one another one day if we believe in Him. So I know that I'm going to see my dad again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to my speech, and I appreciate it. And just remember, just because we pass on doesn't mean we won't see each other again.